Sadistic Penguin Studios presents the At the Show podcast with Tom Yumper Garcia.
Okay, you people sit tight, hold the fort, and keep the home fires burning. And if we're not back by dawn, call the president.
And Tony Chalsa Burt.
I don't know this industry jargon, YP, MP, whatever, okay? All I know is that I cannot get a record contract. We cannot get a record contract unless I take these tapes.
It's almost time, so grab a drink, get your popcorn ready, and join the film discussion with two guys from Chicago talking movies.
Can you dig it? Tony, can you dig it?
I can dig it.
Welcome, everyone, and welcome back to the At the Show podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Tom Yumper Garcia, and I'm with my other co-host, Tony the Sugar Baggy Burt. How you doing, my man?
Doing great. Real excited to be here. Got a lot of good stuff to talk about tonight. How are you, my man?
I'm good, my man. I'm good. Really excited for this one. I actually knocked out 16 pages of notes today. Didn't know it wasn't going to take me that long. I thought it was going to be a short one. But
good movie. It's a good movie.
Yeah, it's a very good movie.
Imagine there's some good stuff to talk about here.
Yeah, I rewatched it today, and in the morning I was knocking out the rest of our stuff. So I'm really excited. So you know why you're here. We have a action-packed show. We're going to go into the 1979 film The Warriors and do our deep dive on that, which me and Tony are looking really forward to. We also have some of the other discussion of our other segments, like what we've been watching. Tony, you want to get into that right now?
Let's do it.
Cool. Let's get into what we have been watching.
That's a me. And also, what were you just watching?
So what you been watching this week, my man?
Okay, I two movies I've been watching this week. The first one is State of Grace. After reading your amazing Miller's Crossing article, I decided to dig into another movie about the Irish mob with the great Sean Penn, Gary Oldman, Ed Harris, released in 1990 and often overshadowed by Goodfellas. State of Grace is equally awesome with great performances by Robin Wright Penn, John Turturro, and what's really, really awesome is you get even a little bit of an early performance right here.
A surprise for you. Don't bother me. I'm negotiating.
Hey, negotiating.
I don't believe it. Terry fucking Miller.
John C. Reilly, who again, just an amazing career he had before Step Brothers fame and just a lot of smaller performances. But State of Grace, again, looks a little bit into the Irish American mob in Hell's Kitchen, New York City. Just a really awesome movie that has a lot of, like I said, good performances. You ever see this one, Yep?
I've seen it a long time ago. Actually, it just piqued my interest right now because it came out the same year as Miller's Crossing. Is it on any streaming networks? Do you know?
Currently, I have not checked that because I own a copy, but I will do that right now. But it is definitely one that you would definitely be able to, I think, watch back to back with Miller's Crossing because it's really it's on Tubi. So if you have Tubi,
awesome.
which is a free app, definitely check it out. I know how much we talk a lot about Gary Oldman and how cool he is. This is one that also had been a long time for me to rewatch it when I dug out my DVD and rewatched it last night. But again, I think you will enjoy it, especially because these are the type of movies. And Ed Harris is really, really good in this movie. You know, when I first watched Ed Harris, I thought he was what I would have called a run-of-the-mill actor. Like you can just, this is just Ed Harris. You know, even in Creepshow, his little dance. But then, honestly, he does some really good work and appears in some really good performances, and this is one of them. And Sean Penn, again, really awesome in this movie too. Again, under the radar, really good movie. Check it out. The other movie that I've watched is The Gift. I am a fan of two movies with the title The Gift. The first one being Sam Raimi's The Gift, which is an awesome well, kind of horror movie, I guess you could call it. But this gift is a little bit different than that gift. Don't get confused with how many gifts I'm talking about here. But this gift came out in 2015. I like this movie a lot. I like the performances from Joel Edgerton and Jason Bateman. Joel Edgerton actually directed this movie in a really, really awesome fashion. Psychological thriller, one of my personal favorites. And if you think Jason Bateman does a good job doing comedy, and you haven't seen him in Ozark, this is another indication that he's a real big jag in this movie and does a really good job playing a jag. And I don't want to give away any of the spoilers, but just there's a lot of really good dialogue between both Joel and Jason Bateman throughout the movie.
It's on the eyes, you see.
See what happens when you poison other people's minds with ideas.
If you have not seen this movie from the very beginning to the very end, I did see this one in the movie theater. I felt like I was taking on a trip. Check it out. Have you ever seen this one yet?
This one, no, I have not. I've seen a Sam Raimi one.
Yeah.
But not this one.
Sam Raimi one is great, equally as great. Could break it down any day of the week. This one is different than that one because that one's a little bit more of like a ghost story. This one's a little bit more of like, you just never know in your past who, if you screw over, they could just show back up on your doorstep, pretty much type of story. But the way it's presented and no giving away the twist at the end is one that really hits you in the gut. Definitely check it out if you can. But what have you been watching, my man?
So just a little thing. State of Grace is actually available on Amazon Prime. I just checked it out. So you can actually watch it for free if you have Amazon Prime. Which I'll probably be doing after this podcast. So like you said, I actually rewatched Miller's Crossing, and I wrote a blog about it. And basically, Miller's Crossing is one of those films by the Coen brothers. It was released in the same year as State of Grace in 1990. And it doesn't get really mentioned when we talk about mob movies. It's a mob movie based in the Prohibition 1930s, 40s Chicago. It deals mostly with the Irish mob, and it has, some great cast members in John Turturro. We also have, Gabriel Bryan, who's awesome in it. You have Joe Pascalato, who's the probably from The Crow. We might even know him as. It's set with the Irish mob taking over and the Italian mob kind of moving in, and we have this like twists and turns of Gabriel Bryan's character setting people up and sleeping with his best friend's girl, and it's got comedy in it. It's a straight Coen brothers film, and it needs to be mentioned more when it comes to mob films. It's very the style is beautifully done. You even have a young Sam Raimi in there as a hitman who gets blown away, which always cracks me up. In the film, it's probably one of my favorite gangster films that doesn't get talked about. Albert Finney and Joe Polito, I'm sorry, are awesome. Steve Buscemi, a young Steve Buscemi's in this film. It's got everything you want in a mob movie, and it keeps you interested, and it moves along faster, I think, than people give it credit for, because there's a lot of things going on, but it's not too much to not know what's going on. Even though at some points you're like, wait, how the hell did he pull that off? But that's the great part of it, because you want to rewatch it again and see what happens. And John Turturro's character is such a slimy bastard. You just love everything about it. You've seen this one, Tone. Tell me what you think about Miller's Crossing.
I befriended a buddy in 7th grade, and this dude had just every single movie this guy turned me on to the point where I often think I got to find this guy, because honestly, he gave me this cassette and I'll never forget it. It was a recording, and it had Miller's Crossing on it and State of Grace. And they were like recorded, like he got the movies from the video store and put this on one VHS and was like, you need to watch Miller's Crossing. First time seeing it, I'll be honest with you, in 7th grade, it was a little, it didn't move like Fargo moved or Goodfellas. So it wasn't until, again, I got into high school that, of course, I loved the Coen brothers. Rewatched it. It is an amazing movie. Great performances, as you stated, all around. Often gets missed under all of the greatness that Coen brothers do. It often doesn't get mentioned in like the top 3, which it could be one of their best, because it is another portrayal of the mob, but shot through the perspective of the Coen brothers. But I like all of these performances in this movie. Seeing it again when you did that article, I rewatched it again, and just it's really cool to just see the work that was just put into this movie. Albert Finney does a really great job in this movie. Another great actor that they were able to get. But as we both know, that the Coen brothers are really, really great directors. And what I like the most is one of my first movies that I remember seeing, even and favorites, is Raising Arizona, which is just such a oddball movie. And this is their follow-up to that, which is just such a serious movie. I just give those guys a lot of credit. Great movie. Great pick.
Yeah, the Albert Finney shooting to Danny Boy is like my favorite part of the film.
And John Polito, the way he talks.
Oh yeah, give me the hi-hat.
Yeah, just that was honestly the first time I watched it. It was almost like, I didn't get it because, like I said, I was too young. But now it's probably my favorite thing about the movie. And he's actually my favorite in a lot of movies. Just the way he kind of shows up in a lot of different Coen brothers type of movies. Actually, until watching the movie and reading about it, I didn't realize he passed away kind of young at 65.
Yeah.
But, as we have talked multiple before, being in things like The Crow, Barton Fink is a great Coen brothers movie. Highlander, Chud, great horror movie. But again,
Gangster
excellent,
Squad.
man. Yeah. We could do a John Polito week where it's like every night. 4 hours on Polito. No, he's awesome.
Yeah, he's in a lot of movies that you wouldn't think he was in. Like he's just in there. And then to go along with that, I went back to an older film that I had, actually got inspired to watch it due to actually the music from it. And it was Ice-T that put me on to the song Colors. And this was actually the soundtrack and lead track for this film, Colors, with Sean Penn and excuse me. Sean Penn is a vehicle along with I can't think of his name off the top of my head, my man. I'm drawing a blank.
Who? Ice-T?
Robert Duvall.
Robert Duvall. Yeah.
Wow, I had a brain fart right there. Robert Duvall in it. He's in I'm looking right on the screen. Awesome film. You have a young Don Cheadle in it. You have Gerardo, who's actually in the film. If you guys don't know who Gerardo is, he did the Rico Suave song. Rico Suave. Yeah, you have a young Glenn Plummer in there. Great actors. Damon Wayans as a drug addict. Maria Conchita Alonso, who actually was in The Running Man. She's the love of Arnold in that one. She was actually also in Predator 2, which you love, Tony.
Great. I love that movie.
Basically shows, two white cops and a young rookie cop who they call Pac-Man because he likes to gobble up criminals, and an older cop who's trying to show him the ropes and trying to get him, to realize how to work the streets and how to, arrest people correctly within the reasons of the law, and how to work the criminals, and basically creating networks. They're part of the Crash unit in Los Angeles, which is the gang unit. Awesome film, kind of depressing in a lot of ways, and it kind of shows a lot how the inner city works. At least back then, and sometimes it's. I mean, I can see resemblance in that in Chicago today. A lot of stuff that's there, but awesome soundtrack. And I just love the monologue that he gives when he tells them about the bulls going up on top of the mountain. Duvall gives him and then how about we just go down and fuck them all? It's basically excellent.
Fuck them all.
Don't try to rush life, basically, and then you have the montage of Two Colors, which is ridiculous because they actually had gang members in it. Great film, Tone. What do you think about this one?
A great movie. I think it was within the last 15 episodes we've done. I covered the soundtrack, of course. Great soundtrack. Ice-T does a great job. Music brings it all together. This is about the umpteenth time that, honestly, I'm putting the slides together, and I don't even realize that we picked two Sean Penn movies until we're actually doing the show, which is like every time we do the show. That's why my face is like, I'm in awe. I'm blown away over here that, like, I did not realize this until we're talking about it, which is kind of cool that, like, in a way that just by randomness, each of us watched a Sean Penn movie. And not because you watch Colors, but because I watch Miller's Crossing, but they just happen to be in both movies. But Colors is a great pick.
Yeah.
I believe when I saw it was on HBO. I don't know if it's still up on HBO Max, but really good and worth watching.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, just a peek behind the curtain of how we do the show. I send my list of movies to Tony towards the end of the week. And he doesn't tell me his because I want to be surprised. The only reason I tell him mine is because he does the PowerPoints.
And I gotta give Yump credit because my whole life, like when I would make somebody a mix CD, is I wanted to surprise them with the songs that I had. So thank you for letting me surprise you, because I like to see you go back, and because I'm aiming, honestly, you're one of the people I'm aiming to be like, if you haven't seen this, man, you gotta see it. And then it goes out to everybody else. So, and the same with you. These movies you sent me, Miller's Crossing, brought me to State of Grace. And I often think of me and you having this movie theater where we're just running back-to-back movies on Friday and Saturday night. These would be movies you could go Colors, Miller's Crossing, and State of Grace all in one night and be pleased on what you're seeing, because they're all just so awesome.
Yeah. Awesome picks, man. I mean, that's what we do the show because we love movies, just to spitball and talk about movies. So that's what we have been watching this week. Let us know what you've been watching over at the Twitter or X, or whatever the hell it's called next week, over at Facebook on the Sadistic Penguin Studios Facebook page, or on this YouTube video at the Sadistic Penguin Studios YouTube. Or you can tweet us at Hook Up on Music, or the Sugar Baggy, or myself at Lil Yumper, or at the After Show Pod. I know that's a lot of information there, but we usually leave our links in the video description. So be sure to check all that out. Tone, that was a great pick of Penn movies. And, The Gift I have to look into, and State of Grace I have to look into now. But I also realized, too, while I was doing the outro for our segment, that tutorials in both Miller's Crossing and State of Grace.
that is it, too. And when you said his name in Miller's Crossing, I had forgot that again. You got two movies, and I picked one, and two of my guys are both of your movie. You get it.
Yeah.
I don't want to confuse anyone out there.
Crazy stuff, man. But let's move on to the meat and potatoes of the show, the main attraction, as they say. We're going to go into the 1979 film, The Warriors. Now, Tony, when was the first time you saw The Warriors?
Ooh, the first time I saw The Warriors, again, man, I haven't told this to too many people, but I'm going to tell you, I wish I could take you on a time machine back to my 7th, 8th, that high school, because it was like my own private film school. And I watched this during that time. And for me personally, this movie is like wine. It only gets better with age. I did like it when I first saw it, but man, do I love it now. I really, really love it now. I think I love it more now than I've ever loved the movie. That's why when you said, let's do this movie, recently has been on Showtime, and it plays, and I like it a lot because it's about only an hour and a half. It's a quick in and out, but it's got a real strong message that we're obviously going to get to. But how about you? When's the first time you saw this?
So the first time I saw it was probably in my teens, probably like 13. I saw it on TNT on a late night showing, and my dad actually had been flipping through the channels, and then we're in the middle of the Baseball Furies fight. What was the scene it was on, and he's like, "Oh, watch this," and we watched the whole movie through. I went to go rent it that weekend, watched it, and then I've owned the movie ever since on VHS and DVD, and I bought the director's cut, and I have it on Blu-ray. So I'm a huge fan of the film. I bought the video game when it came out, so I was a big fan of that for Xbox and PlayStation. I know when it came out. I'm just a huge fan of the film. And one of the reasons why we brought it up is because there's been talks about a remake that we can go into later in the critical reaction stuff. But it's one of my favorite films. I watched it again this morning, even though I watched it millions of times. I just wanted to watch it again. And it's a short film, an hour and a half, and just a lot of crazy stuff. Cult classic, definitely.
For me, always a good gauge for a lot of movies that I watch currently is Katie. Like, I'll show her the movie and see what her reaction to it, and immediately after it was over, she said classic. So, like, again, my favorite thing about the movie, I'm not going to say it until we get to it later, but honestly, the movie, for some unknown reason, hits me harder than probably a movie like this should. I don't know if it's just the time period it came out, all of the workings in the movie, a movie being so different. Like we're gonna get to. I mean, do you really know any other movies that are like this movie? So it's like a lot of elements going into this.
Yeah, there really isn't a lot of movies like this that are out there. I mean, there's been since this have come out, other films that tried to be like this, but nothing is capturing the original magic of this film. But you want to get into this development?
Let's do it.
Cool.
In my thoughts, I use the technique of positive visualization.
So, Tone, this film was actually inspired by some Greek history. Saul Urich wrote the 1965 novel The Warriors, and he based this as a rebuttal to the 1961 film West Side Story. Due to the way that gangs were romanticized, he hated it, and he felt that he wanted to use his own experiences as a New York City welfare department worker to kind of make it seem more realistic in his story. He also had some influence from the Greek author and soldier Xenophon for his book Anabasis, the account of the army of the Greek mercenaries who, after aligning themselves with Cyrus the Younger in the Battle of Cunaxa in 401 BC in his attempt to seize the Persian throne. They found themselves isolated behind the Persian enemy lines. So kind of like a 300 kind of thing, even though that's with Spartans. But basically finding out you're on the other side of the enemy is what kind of inspired him to write this book, along with his hatred for the West Side Story. I know Mr. Hand's a huge fan of West Side Story. I know a lot of people are. I just think it's funny that he hated it so much he decided to write a book about it. But I mean, I never read the book, but this intrigued me to want to read the book for, in the future. In 1969, American International Pictures originally acquired the film's rights, but didn't produce a movie. Producer Lawrence Gordon later acquired the rights and tasked David Scheinber with writing this screenplay. Rights were then obtained by Gordon, who commissioned David Schreiber to write the script. And Gordon had made films like Hard Times and The Driver with director Walter Hill. Walter Hill, who we of course know from the 48 Hours the films. Go ahead.
What I was going to say is, if you've never seen Hard Times, that's another movie that I was turned on to, and it's about bare knuckle boxing with Charles Bronson. And honestly, what I think of who, if I could be a director in the time and life I could be, is like Walter Hill has just made some awesome movies in this time period. So I'm excited that we're talking about Walter Hill. I just had to bring that up.
Red Heat.
Yes, Red Heat. Belushi.
I hate that guy. But no, but I mean, Walter Hill is a good visionary. Like 48 Hours with Eddie Murphy, Nick Nolte. Totally
Great
a film that was like the great straight man cop comedy. Kind of a different play from Beverly Hills Cop,
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, great film. So Walter Hill had a relationship with Gordon. He sent the script and a copy of Urich's novel to him. Hill recalls, I said, Larry, I would love to do this, but nobody will let us do it. It was going to be too extreme and too weird. So early in the process, Hill was the preferred candidate due to his ability to blend raw action and stylized narratives to direct, despite considerations for other directors. No major directors were seriously pursued until Walter Hill signed on. Again, Hill was initially really hesitant to direct the film. He thought the project was too unconventional, and he said it, like I said, weird and extreme for mainstream audiences. See that nobody's going to like it. Gordon and Hill originally intended to work on this film as a Western, but then financing fell through. They pivoted to what more of the updated idea of what we have. They approached Paramount Pictures during a time when the studio was interested in youth-driven, low-budget films. Paramount quickly greenlit the film, especially because Gordon promised to keep the budget low. Film companies love to hear that budget being low so they can maximize those profits. The accelerated timeline was partly motivated by competition with another game-themed movie called The Wanderers. which was also
Mm.
nearing release during the same year. Hill, a fan of comic books, wanted to stylize the film with chapter-like transitions and splash panels. However, these elements were mostly cut due to budget constraints. However, though, if you own the director's cut, the 2005 director's cut, a DVD, it's all done in splash panels, and comic book wipes, chapter transitions. It's
That's
awesome.
very cool. That sounds awesome. I never seen
Yeah,
that.
like, for instance, I know before we go to film breakdown, there's a scene where, the rogues are getting the candy, and he goes screams at the girl for what, and it does a splash panel, like, it draws him animated, and then it does, like, a turn of a page, which is awesome. It's really, really cool. I would love to borrow the DVD. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
that sounds incredible.
So now we have Hill signed on finally. He's again gonna have to do this because it's a low budget film. Uh, he originally wanted the Warriors to be a all black gang because he felt that minorities would represented the more of the inner city and wanted to explain their struggles. Uh, he also wanted an initial subtitle with sometime in the future, but Paramount thought it sounded too much like Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope. Producers also disagreed making an all African American gang. Uh, Walter Hill says of this film on his 2005 DVD introduction, at the beginning, I said that to do this properly and to do the vision of the novel, it really only makes sense if you do it as an all African American and Hispanic gang. And the studio was not keen on that idea. I later came to realize the studio forced me into the comic book idea because it was the only way I can make it make sense to myself. So he was trying to get more of a minority representation, and the studio wasn't going for it. Again, this is in the late 70s, so we kinda understand why, they weren't going for it, even though doesn't seem right. But I wish they would've kinda gone with it. But there are a nice little, representation of African Americans and Hispanics in this movie, as well as other, cultures and, Asian Americans, Italians, and what such. Uh, as far as casting, casting was done extensively in New York, targeting young actors and raw talent and street level authenticity. Reason being, they wanted to cast young actors. Also, having a low budget film, you got to cast unknowns to meet your budget, which is what they did. The funny thing is, for Swan, Hill was considering hiring this lady called Sigourney Weaver.
Mhm.
He watched a movie that she had filmed in Israel called Madman, where the male lead opposite of Weaver was played by Michael Beck. Beck impressed Hill to the point where he actually cast him as the lead as Swan for the Warriors. When it comes to Ajax, Ajax was originally conceived as a tall, muscular, physically imposing figure. Character actor Erwin Keyes was strongly considered for the role. However, Walter Hill, deciding Keyes was too old for the role, decided to look elsewhere. James Remar earned his role as Ajax after becoming so involved in his audition reading of the park bench scene that he lifted the massive table around which the director and producers were seated. After impressing Hill with his intensity during this audition, Hill cast him, and Reamer's performance in this film helped define his career as a character actor known for playing tough, volatile roles.
Hmm.
This is his big break, and even on that DVD I explained, he goes into detail how he was picking up the table, and like he said, Hill's eyes got all big, and it really excited him. So that's method acting at its finest there.
That's really awesome.
For the role of Mercy, Hill's initial preference was for a Latina, predominantly Puerto Rican, for the role. Deborah Van Valkenburg auditioned for the role. Her agent pushed hard for her during the audition, and she won over filmmakers during the casting process. Hill told her she was the unobvious choice when she was cast, which I think is hilarious. And her boyfriend told her, "You shouldn't do this movie. I think they want a more well-endowed actress." Just like, what the hell?
Ooh.
And this is her debut performance for a film production for her, which is kind of cool. For the role of Cowboy, there was some guy named Robert De Niro. He was offered the role of Cowboy, and he turned it down. Eventually cast unknown actor Tom McKettrick, and this is basically his only role in film as Cowboy, which is funny.
Great. That's great.
For the role of Luther, Walter Hill and Lawrence Gordon saw David Patrick Kelly in a Broadway play called Working. Kelly performed a monologue as a hippie who exposed peace and love, but was actually extremely passive aggressive. and that kind of fits in with David Patrick Kelly, another great actor who is a character actor who doesn't get enough recognition. Also in The Crow, he's also in the remake of the um, Longest Yard.
Mm-hmm.
He's also in the John Wick films
It's good.
as the guy who goes and picks up the bodies. You know, phenomenal character. He's in Commando for 8 Hours. He's in a lot of films, man. He's a
Great in 48 Hours. Oh yeah.
yeah. He's one of those characters that you see a lot. Another like a Joe Polito. You see him in all your films. You just can't get him. Know his exact name. But David Patrick Kelly's awesome, dude. My favorite role of his is T-Bird, of course, because I'm biased. But that's one of my favorite roles of him. But he was cast for the role of Vermin, who is originally the role was offered to Tony Danza, who had another role given to him as well, and it was on a table, and it was for this role in this show called Taxi.
Oh,
So you can guess which one Tony Danza went with,
Taxi.
which helped his career, of course,
Mhm.
But due to this, Terry Mickles was actually hired to play Vernon instead. For the role of Snow, we went with Brian Taylor. For the role of Fox, Thomas G. Waits was cast.
Real
Mar-
quick, what movie, which I can't get it out of my head, him and Thomas G. Waits, which John Carpenter movie is Thomas G. Waits? And except he's got a full beard and a mustache. And I'll let you know, he's really awesome in The Thing.
Yeah.
Which it's crazy to see him clean cut, and then like 2 years later he's got the beard in The Thing. But I just had to bring Thomas G. Waits in The Thing up. I'm sorry.
Yeah. He's also in a film called McBain, which always cracked me up.
Oh yeah, classic.
McBain.
McBain.
Yeah. Marcelo Sanchez was cast as Rembrandt. Lynn Thigpen was cast as a DJ for the film. She was cast due to her distinctive voice, and Walter Hill loved the way she looked from her lips down. She had this like mesmerizing look, he said, and it was like awesome. And I grew up with her being on the show Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, which used to come on WTTW.
Where in the
morning.
world is Carmen Sandiego? Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
she was the chief. So it was awesome seeing her in this film when I realized it was her. Roger Hill, no relation to Walter, was cast as Cyrus. And according to executive producer Frank Marshall, they originally hired a real gang member for the role of Cyrus, but could not find him on a day of shooting and never heard from him again. According to Michael Beck, however, Roger Hill was always supposed to play Cyrus, so the real story remains a mystery. So there's a little mystery and up there for the film, the role. Dorsey Wright was cast as Cleon, and stunt coordinator Craig R. Baxley put the cast through a stunt school because Walter Hill wanted realistic fights depicted in the film. So we have our cast now, Tony. We have our story, we have our director, and here are some of the issues this film faced. The homicides were a real Coney Island gang, and they didn't approve of fictional gangs wearing colors on their turf. The wardrobe department made sure nobody walked off screen wearing the Warriors' colors. The actors were safe during the cemetery scene because Brooklyn had a fence around it.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Crew members were sent death threats because local gangs were not cast. Thousands of dollars of equipment were damaged when one gang tore through the set through a lunch break. Throughout production, the cast were regularly subjected to taunts, harassment, and threats from real gang members who were observing the filming, in addition to a sizable contingent of an on-set security members. The producers also paid a real-life gang, the Mongrels, $500 per day to guard the production equipment trucks. Shouting noise, making, and other interruptions from nearby watchers were common during the film, requiring scenes to be reshot after security removed the offenders. This film was shot from 8 p.m. until early morning, and there were tons of people out in the street watching them film it, which I thought was pretty cool. But also you get some, bag eggs in there and you have to get them removed, and that's what happened. Filming sometimes, the process was challenging with a tight schedule and low budget. The entire film was shot in a location in New York City, which brought logistical issues and required the cast and crew to work primarily at night. Bless you.
No, thank you.
Actual gang members wanted to challenge some of the cast members, but were dealt with by production. The Warrior sign on a bathhouse as part of a prop for one of the photos was painted over with a real gang tag. The gang didn't take too well of this, so the producers played them to be in the film.
That's crazy.
The crew once got urinated on upon from a tower blocked due to the noise they were creating at night. So somebody pissed on them because they were mad because they were making all this noise. The original poster featured the words, "These are the armies of the night. They are 100,000 strong. They outnumber the cops 5-1. They run New York City." This upset and outraged many people. Some tried to have the film banned. So this is all the things that are going on with this film. So not only do you have the crunching time of the budget, you have all these gang members that are pissed. You have all the people in the neighborhood that are mad, that are literally pissing on you because you're making all this noise. And you had this concept that Walter Hill had to convince himself it was a comic book to make it work, which is just a lot of things, ingredients in one stew that is turned out pretty good tasting, apparently. For the music, the score for The Warriors is a unique blend of rock, funk, and electronic music, reflecting the film's gritty urban atmosphere. Composed primarily by Barry D. Vorzin, the score includes iconic tracks like Theme from the Warriors, featuring a synth-heavy sound that became a signature of the film. The music was designed to invoke both tension and energy, fitting the intense, high-stakes journey of the gang. Vorzin's innovative use of synthesizers and rock instruments was ahead of its time, influencing future films and the action genre. And according to him, this was the first movie to feature an entire score of synthesized rock and roll music, except for the film's closing song. What did you think about this score, Tony?
Two things. Just a little while ago, what you said. When you watch this movie, it's one of the first ones where I could tell you it feels like it feels like it was shot at the time period it was shot at. Like, I'm sure you've stayed up all night once in your life, and the feeling you get when it's like 4 a.m, that's the feeling you get when you're watching this movie. It's like a weird feeling of these, and the music just adds to that. When you're really thinking about it, and you even describing it there, it's like pre-Carpenter, before Carpenter. I mean, especially on Escape from New York, the synth that like it really holds, but like this movie is just perfect in the music department. There's another thing I'm going to say about the music. Well, I guess I'll bring it up now since she's bringing it up. That's my favorite part of the whole entire movie is the song and its usage at the end of the movie. I just love that song so much. And like, honestly, recently, when you brought this to and you're like, let's do the Warriors, I have been listening to In the City a lot lately. So it was like, we'll get to why after we talk about the movie. I love it so much. But again, the soundtrack is awesome and where it's at. Great soundtrack.
Yeah. Let's just get into the film breakdown, my friend.
Let's do it.
See the arc? He starts down here. He ends up here. Where's my arc, Paulie?
Now, the reason I said let's get into the film breakdown is because this is where the iconic film, the Warriors theme, comes into play. I love the opening shot of the Coney Island, what's it called? The fair they have, the carnival,
island, Coney
Ferris
Island.
wheel, the Ferris wheel they have, which is awesome with the lights flashing up. And then we see them, kind of a monologue that is talked among the cast members as the subway train is rolling by, and they're basically asking questions about, what this meeting is for. And we learned that this meeting is basically a meetup for all gangs in the city, all the major gangs, where they have 9 delegates come out. They can't bring any weapons, and it's a truce, and they're meeting up with the biggest gang in the city, the Riffs, and they're going to speak to a man named Cyrus. One of my favorite parts is where you got people saying, what are we going as?
Going in there with nothing. We're going in there like everybody else. 9 guys, no weapons.
Ooh, Caitlin Reeves has said that Sam proposed to me on the Coney Island Ferris wheel. Awesome job, Sam.
Very awesome.
Yeah, I love this, the little taglines for the movie as they, go through and they're going, they're like, oh, we can't hide.
You never know what you're going to run into out there. If we're wearing our colors, we can't hide. Who wants to hide?
Yeah, just like who wants to hide?
What's
I-
that?
And the crazy thing about this opening monologue and scene is so awesome to me. It's probably one of my favorites actually in films because of the way it transitions. It goes back and forth. You see all the gangs coming through, and I have pictures of them. We'll get to them in a minute. But you know, the scene was actually opened up. On the DVD version, it has the original actually opening, which is actually in daytime, and it's Cleon's girlfriend saying goodbye to Cleon, and the rest of the gang being told by Cleon that they're going to New York, to this New York City to meet with Cyrus. They're going to this big, meeting. And the reason they cut this was because, editors told Walter Smith that, the Walter Hill, the film's shot at night. Then, it's 95% at night. This is kind of like throwing off transitioning. Why don't we just keep it all nighttime scenes? And he decided to go back and shoot what we see now, which is like I think it's 10 times better than the opening scene and what they were going to have. And I've seen the opening scene. It's cool. There's a part where a knife is thrown in the opening scene and it's actually thrown off camera by Penn Jillette, who is a Penn and Teller, which is pretty crazy. In the DVD version, the scene opens up. The first scene you see is actually Walter Hill reading a passage from Saul Urich's book and paying homage to the Greek soldiers that were left behind. He talks about that, and he there's like a little reading from that, which is pretty cool. And then we go into the whole comic book thing. The vest the Warriors are wearing are awesome, and they're dressed as like they got these cool little brown leather vests out there, and it always made me laugh, when I saw them because they're bare chested or they got, their Dago tees on undershirts. And it always cracked me up because like it's either or, and it's like totally this screams 70s to me. And then when I did research for this, Tone, the vests weren't even leather; they were fake leather, which I always thought was
some nice leather vests, some nice pleather vests.
Yeah, so quite hilarious. And when doing more deep research, according to the movie's source script, the full name of the Warriors gang was actually the Coney Island Warriors. Although it's the main gang in the film, it's not the name of the main gang in Saul Urich's source novel, where the main gang was called the Dominators, aka the Coney Island Dominators. The element of the two gangs had in common was that they were both from Coney Island. This opening scene is great, and then we hear the mysterious man Cyrus. Like, who is Cyrus?
What do you know about Cyrus? Magic. Whole lot of magic. What do you know about Cyrus?
He's the one and only. When you're president of the biggest gang in the city, you don't have to take any shit.
Fuck him.
I love Ajax.
That music's awesome too.
Yeah, I love Ajax. Oh, fuck him. Yeah, he's such a dick in this film. It's awesome though. So Tone, like I know I rambled on about this opening scene, gave a lot of information. What do you think about the whole opening scene of the transitions and the stories and the gangs?
It's when I said earlier, I mean, for me watching it, what's like this as an opening, really quick to you. I mean, there's an opening like this, there are movies. I mean, we love the gang scene in Big Trouble in Little China. Doom, doom, doom. But like nothing is like the beginning of this movie, really. And as Walter Hill stated, he wasn't wrong in its unconventionalness, but where I think he was definitely wrong was that people really liked it because of just how different it was, I think. And I think it's because it's 70s. Now you could look back at it, and this is a piece of 70s, then like maybe on like disco, you could be like, oh, okay. I wish I was there for this time period. Really awesome opening.
Yeah, and it shows a bunch of gangs in the film in the beginning of the opening, like the Boppers. If you're watching on the YouTube version, you have I have a picture of the Boppers up. What do you think of their little purple vest there, Tone?
Honestly, somewhere it's like pre-Prince, like before Prince really starts taking off. Like I could see him wearing this, but with no shirt underneath. But it's kind of cool. Art department was nailing it on this movie.
Yes, and then you have the Bull Street Runners who are running up the stairs. They're putting tank tops. You have the Hurricanes who are, I guess, a Latino gang who had their little straw hats, fedoras on. You got the Moon Runners who only get they have vests, I guess, with Moon Runners on their back, and that's the only scene we see them in. We hear them in the film though. You got the Jones Street Boys, who's actually that buddy in this film picture, Tone. He's a guy with the bumblebee shirt. He's a Jones Street Boy,
Nice.
which I thought was hilarious. You know,
Right.
you have the Panzers, who are these guys in military gear. You know, the Scarins, who look like a bunch of guys who are going to Saturday Night Fever. With their Dagos, their Dago tees and their chains hanging down.
I like that
You had the Van Cortlandt Rangers with their, zebra stripes and fedora hats. The Savage Huns, who are the Asian gang. They look like they could fuck you up pretty bad there. You know, you have
I love the hats.
Yeah, the Punks, who we see later in the film.
That was a cool look.
Yeah, the Punks was a really cool film. You know, you got the Orphans, who are these guys.
That guy.
And the Satan's Mothers, who are pretty cool, but just see the background of their patch, which is really, really cool. Just to go through all the gangs here, I'm gonna read you a list of all the gangs that are in the script that could have appeared in the film or did not. It's a long list, so bear with me. The Alley Cats, the Amsterdam All-Stars, the Baseball Furies, aka the Furies, the Black Hands, the Black Jacks, the Brig Trains, the Boppers, the Boyle Avenue Runners, the Charlemagnes, the Colt 45s, the Dealers, the Delaney Rovers, the Destroyers, the Dingoes, which we'll get to later, the E Street Blazers, the E Street Shufflers, the Easy Aces, the Electric Eliminators, who have like really, really cool gold vests for them. You also have the H Street Bombers, the H Street Apaches, the Fastballs, the Fifth Street Bombers. There's a lot of bombers.
They are.
The Fillmores, the Fire Testers, the 5 Points, the Gerards, or Gerards, which is weird.
Gerard.
Yeah, the Gladiators, the Gohards, the Gun Hill Dancers, the Gramercy Riffs, aka the Riffs, the Hi-Hats, which are the mine people, which always crack me up, the High Rollers, the Homeboys, the Hoplites, the Howitzers, the Hulks, the Hurricanes, the Imps, the Jesters, the Jones Street Boys, the Judas Bunch, the Jupiters, the Knockdowns, the Knuckles, the Lizzies, who we see later in the film as these lovely women here.
Oh, yes. Nice ladies right there.
Yes. The Locos, the Magicians, the Meat Packers. Some of these names are crazy. The Mongols, Mongols, the Moonrunners, Napoleons, the Nickel Steaks. Like, you gotta be tough,
The
mother effers.
nickel steaks.
You have to be the Nickel Steaks. The Alley sold. Oh, the Mailman Jack chimes in. The Alley sold many a Satan Mother's T-shirt. Yep.
They did.
And Caitlin's Team Lizzies. And there were a lot of fedoras. The Nickel Steaks is probably one of the names that cracked me up when I read this. The Night Riders, the 9th Avenue Razors, the Orphans, the Panzers, the Phillies, the Plainsmen, the Punks, the Queenbridge Mutilators, the Real Boys, the Red Hook Shooters, the Roadmasters, the Rogues, who, when I saw the movie, the first thing that came to my mind, Tone, for the Rogues was they looked like they're real big fans of Judas Priest.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which is breaking the law, my man.
Breaking the law.
Yeah. You have the Romans, the Runaways,
the
Sakarans, the Saratogas, the Savage Huns, the Shanghai Sultans, the Southern Cross, the Speedwagons, the Sports, the Stevedores, the Stilettos, the Stonebreakers, the Terriers, the Turks, the Turnbull ACs, which are the skinheads that are in this crazy bus here. You have the Whispers, the Warriors, of course, the Xenophone. Why? The Xylophone, the Xenophones, the Xylophone and the Xylophones, the Yo-Yos, the Youngbloods, the Zodiacs, and the Zulus. One of my favorites is the Gladiators, who are just guys with the old man beanie hats.
We're running out of budget for our outfits. We just need black shirts without sleeves. Go.
Yes. When the fictional Turnbull ACs visited a hamburger joint during filming, people fled in fear of them of being attacked. So they did have some stuff. The Speedwagons were definitely riding the storm out. Yes, they were.
The storm out.
Yes. So
Hell yeah.
That is a list of all the gangs. If you want to see the pictures I threw up, check us out on the YouTube
Great.
live version. I'll show you all the pictures. There's some funny ones. But after the opening monologue of the trains, we go to the meeting and we meet the man, the myth, Cyrus, and he says probably one of the most iconic lines of this movie. Probably one of my favorite parts of the film, especially like just the roar of the crowd, and like as they had that shot for him facing the crowd and from behind him, and he does the bowing back,
Oh, it's great.
and everybody just starts cheering. Doing research for this, Roger Hill, who played the role of Cyrus, this scene was shot multiple times, and he improvised a lot of what he was saying. And a lot of what he was saying is kind of like scary if you think about it. He talks about how there's 100, delegates from each gang with a bunch of affiliates. That's 20,000 soldiers. He goes, just there, and there's 100,000 people outside of that all together to go against 20,000 police.
I think that's when the movie really, for me, was like, wow, this is now going to take this to another level, and as stated, I could barely just be on roller skates in a rolling rink, let alone scaring somebody on some roller skates. But
Caitlin said she doesn't understand how a gang can be on roller skates with the punks, and I always cracked me up to that part that he was on roller skates. But yeah, the Cyrus speech is phenomenal, and it still holds true. Like, it scared a lot of people. Like, what if the gangs took over? And I don't have the clip, but the part where he goes, "Our turf, our little piece of turf we're just fighting for. That's weak, brothers." He's basically saying, you're fighting over this little piece of land when we could take the whole state. And imagine if that happened. Like, what would happen? They'd probably have to call in the National Guard.
Probably, yeah.
During this speech, you see the cop cars pulling up. The studio for the next scene wanted Craig R. Baxley to bring a stuntman from didn't want him to bring any stuntman, I'm sorry, from Hollywood. But he needs someone to double for the character of Cyrus. So he did the stunt himself, dressed as a character. The stunt I'm talking about is Cyrus is giving this speech, and we see a gun being passed to the crowd. Remember, there were no guns supposed to be allowed here. And we see one of the rogues, Luther, shoot him. And it's all in slow motion.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, that one, it would have came from outside the stadium.
That's right.
But Luther shoots him, and it's slow motion. He falls back into wood, like a wooden platform. It's actually a really cool shot of how he falls back. Everybody starts running. The cops are coming in, and as we notice, as he's turning around, giggling, we see Fox, one of the warriors, staring right at him, seeing that he shot him. Luther points the gun at him, and a light shines on his face, saving Fox's life, and everybody starts running away. The Griffs are looking at him, saying there ain't no guns supposed to be here. They're going over Cyrus's body. They're like, there's no guns supposed to be here. And we see Luther come out and say to the leader, Cleon,
we saw him. Yeah, that's him. He's the one. He's the one. The Warriors did it. The Warriors did it. The Warriors did it. The Warriors did it.
We see him run at Cleon. Cleon basically throws him and then backhand fists him in the face and starts beating up some of the other rogues that are running after him. But the Riffs, who I guess are in martial arts, start beating the living crap out of him. And then, they surround him. They're like, get him. And it's like, there's a part where a guy just basically elbowing. They're all elbowing him, which I'm like, damn. Is left to interpretation, but it's confirmed Cleon dies here. There's no way he could have survived 30 guys beating on him. It's just an intense film. This scene, and they run away. They go into the graveyard, and there, they're deciding what they should do next. We don't know where Cleon is. A part that cracks me up today, and I actually texted him about this, is when they're asking, where's Cleon? And Cochise is like, the Fuzz must have got him. The Fuzz. It makes me laugh because a friend of the show, Mr. Beefloaf, calls Lot B Security the Fuzz. So every time when I heard it, I just couldn't stop laughing because it made me think of him calling them the Fuzz. But yeah, they go into the graveyard, and there, Ajax wants a challenge for a leader because Swan's second in line, and they're gonna fight. And the other members of the gang basically tell him, "Chill out. He's the war chief. He was picked by Cleon to be war chief," and they kind of go against Ajax, showing that they have at least loyalty to the gang and to the hierarchy of the gang. What do you think about the speech and the assassination and the running into the graveyard part?
That slow motion when he gets shot or whatever, it's definitely memorable in your head. The quote, "Can you dig it?" I mean, that's when you don't have to get up in the morning. I guess that's what plays in my head. But over that being said, just the whole filming of it again, it seems like the filming of this is almost like Punk in a way. Like you're just shooting and you're catching things that like shouldn't go good, like with all these people who aren't really probably a gang that you're using out there, a lot of extras, but it looks just so professional. Looks great. Looks like these are real gangs in New York committing this, and like the cameras just happens to catch exactly what you want to see as the movie watcher.
Yeah, and the mass meeting scene in which Cyrus is killed was loosely based on a real event of December 1971, in which a member of the Ghetto Brothers, Black Benji, was shot and killed during a meeting in which he was trying to negotiate peace between several Bronx and Brooklyn gangs. He was known for his vastly different approach to gang violence, preparing to negotiate peace instead of declaring war on rival gangs. His murder did not incite retaliation, but only furthered peace talks between the offenders and other gangs. The peace talks unified rival gang members to the point that peaceful block parties were held to dissolve turf boundaries. The block parties were also a pivotal movement in the evolution of hip hop music.
Interesting.
So some cool little history that's loosely based on there. After the whole I'm the Leader challenge in the graveyard, we see the Riffs come out, say the famous line, "Who are the Warriors?" And he tells the people that he wants the Warriors taken down and to put the word out. And that's where we get the famous DJ calling everybody boppers and playing records to film, where they play, actually in this instance, Nowhere to Run, that was composed by Brian Holland and Lamont Dozier and Eddie Holland. It's performed by Arnold McCuller in this film, and they're running through the streets. All the gangs are listening to it as they're getting prepared to meet them. They know the words out that they have to find them. Again, there's a homage to this in John Wick 4, if you haven't seen it, where the radio DJ actually plays songs and talks about them chasing Mr. Wick throughout France, which I popped big time when I saw that in the film, because like I said, The Warriors is one of my favorite films, and then they have it, paid homage to in John Wick, which I thought was awesome. You remember that part?
Oh yeah, that's a great part. I mean,
Yeah.
just when the whole DJ, the way the whole movie, it's like going on in the back, it's like in the background. It's a perfect addition to the movie. I'm curious to see this with the comic book on that director's cut. I bet that adds even more to it.
Yeah, it's awesome. I said they went through rain. Director of photography Andrew Laszlo campaigned successfully to have a scene early in the film where there's a sudden rainstorm, because this allowed him to wet down the streets for the rest of the movie and produce lighting effects that wouldn't have been possible on dry surfaces. It also worked well with the film's limited budget. So that's the reason why they had that rain scene, because it actually helped them with lighting, which I think is kind of cool that they just threw it in there. It also shows them that they're going kind of like they're basically out in the elements. They have to just go through it. At this time, after this whole montage of the gangs are shown again, the baseball Furies grabbing their bats, everybody listening to the song, the Turnbull ACs on their bus listening to it. They're actually hunting the Warriors at the subway station, and it cracks me up because they're seeing them. Fox is kind of like their lookout. He runs back to the group to tell them, "Hey, it's Turnbull ACs," and Ajax responds to "Skinhead fucks." Like, it cracks me. That I guess the truce is off, and they just run like a bat out of hell to the train, and it cracks me up because they just start running, and then the Turnbull ACs chased him on their bus, chase him up into the subway station, and they barely make it into the car. The Turnbull ACs can't attack them, and they're like talking crap from the subway car, and then they're saying Ajax responds, "Oh, we could have beat them. They're a bunch of wimps." It was like, he goes, "They didn't look like wimps to me," is what Vermin says, but it's always cracks me up how Ajax always has to be like the alpha male. the whole situation. But awesome little scene of them running. What do you think about that, Tom?
Oh, great scene. Again, from the perspective of being in any gang, when you're about to get in a fight with another gang, until you're into it with them, I wouldn't call anybody wimps, and especially in this movie.
Yeah, and during this, scene, we go back and forth. It's kind of like going back and forth between this and other things happening around the city. We see that they're on the train. They're going to Coney Island, and they tell Rembrandt, "Look at the maps and tell us where we're going." And he goes, they're like, "Yeah, nobody can read these," which always cracks me up because now they actually have it announced where you're going next on the train with the announcements. Back then they didn't have that, so maybe they didn't. Nobody really know how to read them, but we kind of see what the rogues are doing, and we see Walt Luther run up and make a phone call, and then he checks in with his rogue buddies.
Is that we're set all right? Somebody should pick their ass up. The Riff sent out the word. They want him alive. We don't. Soon as someone grabs him, the better. What's the matter? You afraid the Warriors gonna shoot their mouths off before they get racked? Yeah, right. I'm worried. I just don't want the Riffs down on my head. They're looking for the Warriors, remember? We can do some looking too. Ought to make you feel better.
Yeah, that part always cracks me up too. And they're just taking candy from this, newsstand, and she's like, "Hey, you gotta pay." And he's like, "For what?" And he throws a candy back at her. Total dicks. But David Patrick Kelly is awesome in this film. Like his voice, his mannerisms. He's just like a little slimy dude. He's a small guy, but he takes like the slimy character to the extreme in this film. We then see them come up to a neighborhood, and we see all these guys looking down at them from the top of the buildings, and we learn these are all the orphans who are saying, "Hey, why are you coming through our turf? Parlay, no invitation." And Swan tells them, "We don't have an invitation, and we're parlaying right now." So basically, he says, "Oh, you guys can walk through. You guys are on peace." And we meet the character of Mercy, who comes down to mock the leader, who then changes his mind, tells them to take their colors off. Now, prior to meeting with this, gang leader of the orphans, who are considered so low down the totem pole that they are not even on the record, meaning that they're a lower gang. And even when they are told about the Riffs say they're not in our network. They rumbled anyway. He tells his gang, Swan tells the gang, "Don't mouth off, be calm no matter what he says." And when he tells them to take off their colors, he's like, they're trying to explain, "No, it doesn't mean we're at war, it's our colors." He's like, "Take your colors off." And then Swan's just basically like, "Fuck you," which always cracks me up. And you got Fox saying the line, "Just because some whore shakes her ass doesn't mean we're gonna stop being who we are." But Mercy follows them, walks with the Warriors, and they grab her and they're like, "What are you doing following us?" And that's when the orphans come through, and they say another funny line from it.
You see what you get, Warriors? You see what you get when you mess with the orphans?
Yeah, when he has like a looks like a dull razor he's holding in his hand. You got all the guys there, and then got the a guy, his name is Apache, his real name. He's like, "We're gonna raid on you, Warriors." And Snow just like casually takes off this bottle off his neck. They rip off a piece of Mercy's dress and set it on fire, and they throw it at basically a Molotov cocktail. They throw it at a car that's sitting there in front of this mechanic's place, and they run away, and it explodes, and it kills 2 orphans who are just laying there, and the orphans run away. Like there's like 30 of them. There's 8 of them, which just makes me laugh that they're like, and they're like, "Oh shit, he threw a Molotov cocktail. What are we gonna do?" Which just shows how low they are on the the hierarchy with the gangs there, and how weak they are. The orphans were not in the original book. They were actually invented for this film. But what do you think of the whole orphan scene?
Oh, the movie just is getting better as it's going along here. Just that interaction with that guy, it just is like I'm not taking you serious.
Yeah.
But again, when you're walking through the streets and you're being challenged by gangs, you can't just sometimes walk by. So this is a good indication of these characters in these movies that I love. Like they're not in it long, but they leave this lasting impression with you, and this is one of them.
Yeah. And as they run into the train station because they think they're chasing him, Nobody's chasing them. And even Vermin's like, why are we running? You know, they come to a stop in the next scene. You see Luther making phone calls again. He's calling people and they ask him, why are you so excited? He's like, because I'm having a good time. We cut to a next scene where the Warriors are actually at a stop and we see the police officers there. And the Warriors just make a break for it. They run for it. They're split up. When Cochise, Rembrandt, and Vernon are fleeing from the cops at the train station, they run past the bearded man with a blue sweater and a flat cap. And he comforts his girlfriend. That was the director, Walter Hill, in a cameo. It's right at the beginning when they're at the newsstand. You see a guy do this with his girlfriend. He's actually in there. We see Fox with Mercy, and in the script, Fox was originally the love interest of Mercy, but the two actors had no chemistry, and then romance was transferred to Swan. The reason I say this is because Thomas G. Waits and director Walter Hill had a lot of problems. Waits had issues with the principal photography and then it was difficult with Hill. His character was removed from the movie. So in this scene where they're getting chased, he gets actually tackled by a cop and thrown into an oncoming train. I like the way it's shot. It shows a cop flipping him over in a slow motion, and then it shows the train just roll past really fast. So you don't actually see anything gruesome. It's just a nicely composed shot. To this day, Walter Hill says he feels bad about the rough times he had with Waits. Waits is not in the final credits of this film because he demanded that this name be removed. Walter Hill told The Hollywood Reporter, I feel very bad about the whole thing. We weren't getting along very well. I'm perfectly prepared to think that some of it was my fault. He did have issues. He had some problems in his life, and it just wasn't working. So I took him out of the movie and did a quick rewrite and gave a lot of his material to Michael Beck's character. I'm not proud of all of this at all. I think if I had been a better director, I might have gotten through to work with him better. But we felt, beginning to be a disruptive force. He's since apologized. He's written me a couple of letters. So that's pretty crazy, huh?
It's a very interesting story. Very excellent. Not excellent for Waits, but just how sometimes the stuff works in the background.
Yeah, and in the subway where Mercy is running with Fox's double, the stunt coordinator, this is why she breaks her hand because she fell and broke her wrist. Because the actor didn't let go of her hand when they were pushed, so she actually fell and broke her wrist. This is why we later see her appear with a jacket because it's covering up her cast. The filmmakers had Mercy disappear for a while from the film, and then meeting up with the Warriors at the subway platform. She said she stole the jacket. Remember, she's like, "Oh, I stole this," when she mixed up with Swan's character. So as they run from the cops, Swan, the Ajax, Cowboy, and Snow meet up with this other gang of guys called the Baseball Furies, and tell them, like, this is like one of my favorite parts of the film. You see the Baseball Furies just standing around with their bats, and you have the iconic synthesizer music played. What do you think of that whole scene when they're first introduced?
Oh, it's reminds me something that's in like Escape from New York. Just a really gritty scene, but the way it's filmed, like that scene that you described earlier on the train platform, just you're feeling like you're in the midst of that amazing 1970s filming that everybody loves, and just really good scene. This whole scene here with the Baseball Furies is really, I guess, one of the top scenes in the whole movie.
Yeah, and they're probably the most recognized besides the Warriors of the gangs. If you are looking at the YouTube right now, or you can look it up a picture, they have their face painted with baseball uniforms. They have like these wigs, the baseball hat, and they were created due to the inspiration and love of Walter Hill's favorite band, Kiss, which is kind of crazy.
That's crazy.
So he was a big fan of Kiss, and he loved baseball, and that's why he created the way the Baseball Furies look and the invention of them. The leader's face paint clearly influenced another guy by the name of Marilyn Manson, since he looks like Marilyn Manson in a baseball uniform. Would you say that?
Yeah, I would. Sure.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. During the scene, they see them getting chased by the Furies. They run, and I love the part where they stop, and he's like, Ajax, like, did we lose these fucks? And you hear the synthesizer of them running behind them. Film Filming of the encounter chase and fight sequences with the Baseball Furies include 2 sets of actors playing most of the Furies. A New York City running group known as New York City Roadrunners was brought in for the night for filming using the same costume and makeup to capture most of the extended running shots. So when they're running, that's actually a running group, which is crazy because they like run all crazy. The fight with the Warriors is actually the stunt team that was actually most of the Baseball Furies. It involved 2 weeks of rehearsal, 1 week of shooting, and used actual bats. When you notice that when Swan and Snow kind of break off from the group and just Ajax and Cowboy are getting chased, Ajax is kind of slapping Cowboy in the butt, and the reason being is to try to get him going and run faster. And we get the monologue where he's telling him, "I can't make it. I can't make it." And he's like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "Yeah." And he tells him, "Good. I'm tired of running from these wimps." And we see him punch a Baseball Fury, and we see probably one of the most iconic lines besides the "Can you dig it" line that Ajax says to the leader of the Baseball Furies.
I'll shove that bat up your ass and turn you into a popsicle.
Which always cracks me up. And he does like a little like hypnotizing thing with the bat and like shows it to him. That line, "I'll shove that bat up your ass and turn you into a popsicle," is ranked number 12 on UGO's top 50 tough guy lines, and it's on the top 50 greatest baseball lines ever, which
Interesting.
is hilarious. They see a big battle between the Furies and the Warriors as Swan and Snow come back in, and it was really, really intense to the point that Michael Beck actually broke 3 of the stuntman's ribs while filming the scuffle with the Furies. Beck himself was unaware of this until he was confronted by the same stuntman at a Warriors reunion 37 years later. And that scene's actually shown in the film. So I wonder if it's the scene where like they're fighting and there's a part where like just a Fury just like standing around and the guy comes and like just bashes him with a bat in the side and he falls to the floor.
That could be it. Oh yeah.
I don't know. But they beat the crap out of the Furies. They're really, really excited, to have done it. And he's, again, Ajax stands tall as they start walking away from the beaten Furies. And we hear, some great monologue by the DJ for this part. And, this is one of my favorite little things that she does in the film.
Latest sports news off the street, boppers. The Baseball Furies dropped the ball, made an error. Our friends are on second base and trying to make it all the way home. But the inside word is that the odds are against them. Stay tuned, boppers. Stay tuned.
I just love that. So, Tone, what do you think of the whole fight and like the Baseball Furies scene?
Filmed amazingly. Again, not seeing much like this. Baseball dressed up, cool makeup. Now that you've shared the Kiss insight, I think I love it even more.
Yeah, it's just they're probably the most iconic, like I said, of the film besides the Warriors.
Yeah.
They're just awesome. They're at baseball games now. They're they're in Halloween is a big time for the Baseball Furies to be shown. Like just awesome, just great costume. After we see a little quick cut scene of where Vernon, Cochise, and Rembrandt are off the train waiting for people, and they're like, "Where's everybody at?" They don't know because remember they got chased by the cops. They broke up into separate areas. We see the introduction of the Lizzies, where they see these girls just standing at the bottom of the stairs, and one of them says hi, which always cracks me up. I mean, you gotta smell something fishy here, but then again, you gotta remember these are people like adolescent teens, late teens, early 20s that are probably horny, like machismo. So they're like, "Oh, these girls are here." And they kind of go off with them. And, we cut back to the Warriors walking through the park and we see a young woman sitting on a bench. And Ajax is really, really interested in her. And he's going to get a little exercise, he tells them. And they're like, "No, don't go." They're telling him, like, stay, stay with us. There's plenty of women back in Coney. He's like, "Oh, Ajax likes to use a word I'm not going to say on here a lot in this film. But Swan basically tells him, like, "You got a one-track mind," and it pisses him off. Like, so he goes and sits with this lady who turns out to be a young Mercedes Rule. Now, Mercedes Rule is actually in one of my favorite comedy of mine called Lost in Yonkers. She actually did the Broadway play to where she won a Tony Award for her role, and then they made it into adaptation in the film with Richard Dreyfuss. Um, Kevin Spacey actually played the original Richard Dreyfuss played, but she's in it, and she's also done a whole bunch of other TV shows like Law and Order and whatnot. Like kind of a good, Broadway actor to transition to film and TV. But she plays an undercover cop, and when Ajax gets a little handsy on her, she arrests him for being a rapist because it was basically a sting operation. And Ajax goes ape shit, and he starts lifting up the bench. He basically does the reenactment of his audition here, and Mercedes Ruehl had no idea that James Remar would get so worked up trying to escape that he begins to drag the bench in the scene and tries to kick her. And she can clearly be trying to avoid getting hit by him. Remar said he described Ajax as thinking he's 9 feet tall. Then we see the appearance of a guy named Erwin Keyes, who was supposed to be the original Ajax. He's actually the cop that after Ajax punches the first cop that comes at him, he's the second one that hits him in the gut and makes Ajax bleed from the mouth. He was cast in this role as compensation for not being Ajax in the film. What do you think about that whole little scuffle here?
Probably another scene I remember the most in the movie for some reason. I mean, James Remar is the actor that I know the most from this movie. So, like, going back and rewatching it again after all these years, and then seeing James Remar and watching him as Dexter's dad in Dexter, and just seeing just that whole scene again. I'm glad they got him because he was a piece of garbage in a way. So, it's a good scene all around.
Yeah, and James Remar actually does a great monologue of this scene in the DVD version because there's an extra part where they have a documentary, and he explains how he was hurt that he had to do. He knew the scene was coming, but he's like, I'm on set, and all the other warriors they've gone home, and it's just me. He's like, my time on this, on the film was over, and he felt hurt because he enjoyed it so much, which just shows how much he loved filming this scene, this movie. But it's actually, Tony, I gotta get this to you. You have to watch this,
please.
But then we see, after Ajax is arrested, Cowboy and Snow go back and wait for him because Cowboy tells Swan he saved my ass back there, and Snow's like, I'll go back with you. Swan says, okay, I'll meet you guys up at the station, let the other guys know. They go, and Swan doesn't see anybody there. He only sees Mercy, who again appears with a coat, and she explains she stole off somebody. They kind of have flirting, but Swan's like a real big dick to her in the film. But it cracks me up here too when you see this cop walking down the subway station, and he screams out and sees Swan. Do you know who that cop was?
If I'm not mistaken, it's Billy. It's Billy.
Billy, you son of a bitch. Yeah, Sonny Lanham.
Oh, the scream! I wish I did the scream good.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Yeah, but Billy runs at Swan and he gets hit with a bat in the leg. Pretty bad. In one take, Michael Beck swings a bat into Deborah Van Valkenburg's face in a scene where he throws it at the cop. She was rushed to the hospital at 3 a.m. for stitches and still has a scar. Ooh. Michael Beck is tearing people up in this film. But yeah, it's they would get away from the cops to go on the side of the subway cars, and then they make out, and then Swan again pushes her away to be a jerk. We then cut to the Lizzies and the other warriors, and they're making out. You have the best part is when they're trying to talk to him, and the music You're Moving Too Slow is played by Johnny Vastano, which I think is I love this scene because it has two songs that actually have words in it. The first one, You're Moving Too Slow, is when she sets them up and tells them take your pick, and Vernon of course takes a pick with a woman. Cochise is love when he's taking a pick with a woman, and Rembrandt is kind of against it. And the reason being is actor Marcelo Sanchez was openly gay, and in this movie, he is the only warrior not to fall for Lizzies as Cochise and Vermin did. Rembrandt's counterpart, who was in the book named Hinton, also lacks a girlfriend but is straight. He waits for his gang by doing things such as entering a public restroom to have sex with an underage girl with a female prostitute, Then he shakes off both a homosexual and a young junkie offer sexual favors for money. So that's the difference between the book and here. But Rembrandt's character was due to Marcelino Sanchez not being openly homosexual, decided not to be the one. But I think he does it awesomely when that girl comes, "Hey, little man, want to dance?" And he just looks at her like,
Yeah.
I think you could take it that way, or you could take it as he doesn't trust him, which is he's probably the only smart one of the film. You hear the song.
Off topic, just really quick here. The actor who you Marcelino Sanchez, he sadly passes away in '86 from AIDS.
Yeah.
And this movie, again, as you just stated, just that little part, as you stated, the look he gives her, remember forever. It's crazy that he's been gone now over 40 something, years and still a lasting impression in such a great role.
Yes, and he's talked about fondly on the documentary. But another part that's played in this is a song that's played is "Love Is a Fire" by Gina Raven, who performs it. Awesome song. I sent it to you, Mailman Jack. I was listening to it. This is when the girls are making out, and then all of a sudden we hear this great line when they lock the door and they tell him this.
Famous warriors, the guys that shot Cyrus.
The chicks are packed.
And right when that little click is, and when that girl's making out with Cochise, and she pops out the knife, and he's like, "What the hell?" And they start shooting at him. They're horrible shots, by the way. Yeah. "Love Is a Fire" is a bop, Caitlin. They start, running away. They break through the door all slow. And this scene actually, all these scenes were shot around New York City, which I think is crazy. That they probably found in a nice little apartment for this. They run away. Rembrandt gets cut on the outside, and then he finally tells them, because they're in the commotion, they don't know what's going on. He finally tells them what is going on.
So we gotta hold ourselves together. We got to. See, man, if we go to pieces, somebody out there is gonna get us.
I think we shot Cyrus. What are you talking about? I don't get it. I think we shot Cyrus. Every gang in the city must be looking for us. Shit. We're not gonna be able to make it back.
We're gonna make it back. We came this far, and we're gonna go the rest of the way. Let's go to Union Square, okay? We gotta tell the rest of the guys.
That's the part where they're actually come now. They realize, okay, that's why everybody's after us. They think we shot Cyrus. They go to Union Square. Vermin, who is played by Terry Mickles, was supposed to be killed by Ulysses in the original script. But he made his character more comical and thus more memorable, that the ploy worked and his death scene was taken out. And Terry Mickles is not really a well-known actor, but this is probably his best known role. But he's iconic to me too, just the way the stuff he says. "Oh, I'm tired of sitting around here," and they're like, "Berman, shut up." It's just stuff like he says makes me laugh, and it's kind of crazy that he worked with his role and his scene was taken out. That scene was taken out, so that's kind of cool.
That's real cool.
We then cut to Union Square where the gangs meet up and they have a showdown. But in the original script, there was a gang called the Dingoes. And in it were John Snyder, who plays a gas station man in the film when the Rogues are getting their car filled up, and Kevin Bacon. I remember. They were supposed to be a homosexual gang with Doberman pinchers and blonde wigs who captured Swan temporarily. But this part was cut from the film. He was supposed to be abducted by them, and they were a sadomasochistic gang that had their Doberman pinchers, and he was supposed to escape and lead the warriors back home, eventually meet up with them, not here, but in the final battle. And in the original script of the movie, Cleon is killed by the Gramercy Riffs, which we saw. Cochise is killed by the Baseball Furies, and we know he lived and wasn't even there. Ajax is caught by the police. Vernon is killed by the Lizzies, and Swan gets captured by the Dingoes. That leaves only 4 warriors in this upcoming battle with the Punks. Swan does, however, appear at Coney Island to fight the final battle after the Riffs learn the truth. So back to this battle, and Caitlin's favorite part, we see the Punks scoping out Swan on their rollerblades. Their leader's on rollerblades, and we see Mercy come up and say, "Hey, that he's looking at you," and he's like, "I know he made me. Now he knows. I know he made me." But luckily, he meets up with the other warriors, and they have a plan to go into the men's bathroom, and they pull Mercy in there. But before she goes in there, she says this.
Wait a minute. Can't go in there. It's a men's room.
Are you kidding?
And Vernon pulls her in. Are you kidding? He pulls her in there, and they have this epic battle in the bathroom where the guy on skates is looking underneath the stalls to see if there's feet there, and Rembrandt puts his feet down to bait the guy to come in. He comes in, and Rembrandt sprays him in the face with spray paint and punches him, and they just start beating the shit out of these guys, the punks. This is the only scene that was shot at a set. Every other scene was shot around the city. They're breaking stuff. Vernon gets thrown into a mirror, and it's if you briefly pause it, you can see that Vernon is thrown to a mirror above the sinks. That it's a blonde guy that actually gets thrown into the mirror, not a black haired guy like Vernon. So there's kind of a mix up there. But what do you think about this whole little scene with the Lizzies and then the Union Square showdown?
That whole Lizzie scene, as you stated, you're like earlier, you said, oh, they seem nice, but then you kind of feel like something fishy is going to happen. And then the Union Station showdown, of course, is just, again, another cherry on top with just the way it's filmed. I mean, Walter Hill is hitting them out of the park scene after scene. And we're getting close to my favorite in the whole movie. So it's just leading up to it, I think. This whole movie's leading up to what I think is a very awesome pinnacle.
Yeah, and after this scene, they all get on the subway to go back home, and they see like a prom couple coming home from prom at night. And they kind of do two visuals of how Mercy's kind of like dirty from running, and the prom couple's all like cleaned up and nice. And she tries to fix her hair, and Swan tops her, because they were looked down upon. They didn't look good. And this is where he kind of like softens up on her and gives her a croissant. What's it called? Not croissant, crochet.
Yeah, croissant
Crochet.
would be awesome though.
Yeah, they're very good. I love
Yeah,
croissants.
they're good.
And they come back to Coney in the morning, and it looks like a desolate wasteland, kind of like buildings are run down. It's kind of dirty looking, and Swan says kind of an iconic line here.
This is what we fought all night to get back to.
He's like, why are we looking at? He's like, maybe I might just move on. And Mercy volunteers to go with them, even though she's never been anywhere, but she loves traveling, which shows that the characters are kind of bonding there. But as they go back to their kind of like their little grounds, their turf by the boardwalk, we see a hearse pull up, 1955 Cadillac hearse pull up with the Rogues inside. Now, according to David Patrick Kelly, the Rogues 1955 hearse had no seats in it. The driver, Joe Weiss, had to sit on top of a box in order to see the dashboard. So it must have been very uncomfortable to drive around in that. So they had to sit basically on the ground of the car. But we hear probably the most iconic, besides the "Can You Dig It" and the popsicle line from Luther.
Come out to play. Warriors, come out to play.
And this was actually improvised by David Patrick Kelly. He was told by Walter Hill to come up with something, but don't tell him. He saw him run out to a garbage can and grab some empty beer bottles he found under the boardwalk, and created the imitating dialogue where he banged them together, as a great picture here showing him do it. And he actually based it on a neighbor who used to intimidate him, that lived next door to him. And when he tells a story, he's like, yeah, he used to be like, David, come out to play. So he said he kind of used that as fuel for this this role. And while this is going on, like, he's saying this, and they're gearing up, man. They're grabbing their knives, they're weapons to fight them, and they go to the beach, and the rogues follow them. And Cyrus is talked about here. Swan asked,
Why'd you do it? Why'd you waste Cyrus?
No reason. I just like doing things like that.
it's just like Luther's just a maniac. He just basically says, "You're next," and they think they're gonna fight. And Luther's like, "No, we're not gonna fight." He's just gonna shoot him. And he goes to point the gun at Swan, and Swan throws a switchblade into Luther's arm. He screams, "Ah!" Yeah, making him drop his gun. This mirrors the scene in Akira Kurosawa's Yojiba when Sanjuro disarms Yusuke, the gunfighter, in exactly the same manner. So I don't know if it was intentionally put there, but it does represent some Asian cinema that is iconic as well. When Luther is on the floor getting counseled by his gang, we see the riffs show up out of nowhere, which makes me laugh because there's like 40 riffs, and there's no way they did not see them come on the beach. And they go, "Riffs, they go, yes, sir." And prior to the scene, we find out that somebody actually told the riffs who actually shot Cyrus. And at this time, the Warriors don't know that, but the Warriors are told by the riff leader at the time,
You Warriors are good. Real good. The best.
and they're actually given a path to walk away, and they walk away, and then the riffs surround the rogues, and all you hear is Luther scream "no" as they're beaten, probably to death, because they got some weapons on them, and the Warriors walk off into the beach to the classic "In the City" that was actually written by Joe Walsh of the Eagles and Barry Dvorak, to the monologue of montage of the final film. I'm a huge fan of the Eagles. I know they get a bad rap from a lot of people. I love Joe Walsh. What did I send you, the Waffle Stomper song from Fast
Oh, yeah.
Times? Like,
Oh, yeah,
I love a
great.
lot of Joe Walsh's stuff.
Joe Walsh is great.
But yeah, I love In the City. It's it captures the movie itself. And
Like I was saying earlier, it's cool because, like as you said, the movie's filmed at dark. Like I said, it gives you a feeling of staying up all night. And then if you've ever stayed up all night, how you feel in the morning is like that like you don't want the night to end. That's kind of how the day feels, but also you're moving on to something better than what the night brought you the night before. That's kind of what I get from the movie. The song was so good and made by Joe Walsh for the movie that on the Eagles' last album, they were so short on material that he brought it back to the band, and then they recut it for the long run. But its use at the end of the movie here, just as they're both staring off, and the way it's filmed, the way Luther, when he gets stabbed again, the slow motion, just really, really, really great cinematography, and a really great wrap up on a really good period piece in 1979 that makes you feel like everything that was going on in 1979, but wrapped up in a movie. You have the future, which is the 80s. What's that going to bring you? It also has a mixture of all the things that you love in 70s cinema. Just a really great movie all around.
yeah, and the scene where they're walking off, where they're vindicated and they won, they were told to walk away, and they kept walking because the sun was rising, and they got kind of annoyed. Michael Beck and Deborah Van Valkenburg got annoyed because, like, how long do we have to walk? Because they can't even see the cameras anymore. And when they came back, they had roses waiting for Valkenburg. This cast did, not the cast, the cameras and the crew did, which was like a thank you for a great job done. And she even talks about how it being a memorable moment for her as an actress. So awesome, little backstory and little things that they did for the film. My final thoughts on this: excellent film. I can see why it's a cult classic. Still holds up to this day. It doesn't look like it's aged badly, even though it's. I think Hill wanted to go with a dystopia that wasn't, really time defined, even though it can be in certain aspects, because you got the radio and people listen to radio, the styles of cars, all that stuff. But it still holds up to this day, and it's still an enjoyable watch, Tone. Excellent watch. So that is our breakdown of The Warriors. We went through the development of the story, and then we just went through an extensive breakdown of the film. Tony, you want to get into some critical reception and fan theories?
Let's do it.
You know that fat cocksucker says I look like the Shah of Iran?
Who does? Tony. I never got that at all.
78 right there. Hey, man. Good to see you, bro. I'm just looking at y'all. I said, oh, them the Warriors from the movie. Oh!
That's such an awesome
It is.
thing. I saw the magazine pictures of that.
If you get a chance, you go on YouTube. There's like a 3-minute video, and honestly, it's cool that a movie like this you can still like again walk on the subway like that with those with your Warriors colors, and people are still going, "Oh, that's the Warriors." That's awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. The movie had a budget of $4 million and a box office of $22 million. This film basically became a cult classic, but it was proposed that the film would have made more money. It had some negative reviews, and we'll get to those. But it earned $3.5 million its opening weekend. However, word of mouth and a couple of incidents killed the film's momentum. According to Walter Hill, what had happened was gangs were attracted to the film, and they had seen other rival gangs and caused violent incidents. Paramount Pictures panicked and decided to pull the movie out of theaters. Lawrence Gordon said the movie still kept going while the studio pulled the movie out of marketing. Despite this, the movie went on to be a cult hit and even made a profit, since earning $22.4 million in initial box office receipts against only a $6 to $7 million budget. So you got to remember, those budgets also include advertising. So it went from 4 for the studio and then another 2 for advertising. Vincent Canby of the New York Times was very critical, describing the film as an exercise in style and calling it a silly movie that was visually interesting, but shallow in its content. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times gave the film 2 out of 4 stars, saying it was more style than substance, though he acknowledged its strong visual appeal. Pauline Kael of the New Yorker said that she appreciates its energy and how it captured a fascination version of New York, calling it a nightmarish fantasy. Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune was critical of it, calling it a depressing experience due to its dictation of violence and its focus on gang life. But in retrospective, praise has been given to it. Over the years, critics have reassessed the film, praising it for its innovative use of style, visual flair, and the influence of later films and pop culture. Many now view it as an iconic example of 1970s exploitation cinema and a cult classic. These reviews reflect the film's polarizing nature, where some appreciate its style and atmosphere, while others were put off by its thin plot and sensationalized violence. Its cultural impacts include fashion. The gang's costumes and designs were inspired by various streetwear designs and trends at the time. It had iconic music, with the "In the City" by George Walsh became the anthem of the film's score, influenced more synth-driven soundtracks in the 1980s. Twisted Sister hit song "Come Out and Play" starts off with the sound of clanking bottles and singer Dee Snider chanting "Twisted Sister, come out and play." This is a homage to one of the Warriors' best-known scenes. There were video games made of this for Rockstar, who you might know that make Grand Theft Auto. Rockstar Games released a video game adaptation in 2005, further embedding the film's influence in pop culture. That game is actually fun to play, and I think it's worth like $200 if you have a copy of it. Urban art and street culture were also changed. The film's visual style and gang imagery have been referenced in street art, graffiti culture, and even modern gang portrayals. So it's basically became a cult classic, and it has some re-envisioned history. I mean, I would have to talk to Roper about this to ask him what he thought. But I can see why Siskel didn't like this film. He also didn't like The Crow because of the violence. It wasn't the story; it was the violence. Gene Siskel was not a big guy in violence. He always said when he did the Godfather, not the Godfather, the Goodfellas film, he liked it. The violence was a little too much, but he was not a big violence in films. Ebert gave it a more okay review, but I can see why people were put off and why people loved it, and why people still love it to this day.
Well, I guess it's for me again, it's I could see at the time why people didn't like it because there were other movies at the time that were now I don't want to say more positive in nature, but in its dark nature in a time where there's just so much more movies that have come since it, there's just so much more darker. At the end of the day, the light on the beach, I think, is the light that just shows that the rest of the movie, that's what you were getting to. You were getting to the light. And I wish we were at the Sox game last night because it seemed Richard Roper was at the Sox game. So
Yeah.
we could, and honestly would have been like, sir, please, what do you think of the Warriors? You already talked to him. Me personally, I would have melted like butter. But again, would be an interesting question to ask.
Yeah, I do want to ask him. Great. My Sox Summer sent me that text yesterday. And I was like, "Oh, I wish you were there." And like, I was just burnt out. Couldn't make it to the games this weekend because of work. But yeah, Roper's the man. Awesome guy to talk to about films. You want to hear some fan theories?
Let's do it.
All right, so we got a few fan theories. They're not that long. Most of them revolve around Cyrus, which I thought was hilarious. And these are from the Reddit fan theories. Now, if they have a name of the person that wrote it, I will mention it. If they don't, like this one, it was deleted. So I guess they deleted their account. This thread or Reddit subreddit is called Cyrus Knocked Off. Do those of you that have seen the film think that maybe the police had Cyrus knocked off so that the gangs would unite? My first reason for thinking this is because the cops show up in force right before the revolver is being passed through the crowd to the real killer. Second, at multiple times throughout the movie, you see the killer on the phone passing and receiving information with an unknown source. Afterward, several police show up exactly where the Warriors just happened to be in a subway. Anyway, I was bored of watching a movie and just popped into my mind and want a little feedback. Thanks. What do you think about that?
That one, I mean, it is viable, but it would change a little bit of the dynamic of the movie, maybe.
Yeah, I think there's just too much explanation for why the cops are there. There was a big rally, someone got killed, and of course they're gonna be hunting the subways because they knew all the gangs were there. They had to see them coming. I mean, people probably reported them going on the subways towards one central location. So, as a cop or like a gang unit's cop, that's like the best thing that could happen because you have all the gangs in one spot and all the leaders in one spot. You can arrest them all. Would suck for the jails that night, but it'd be kind of cool to just get them all, kill two birds with one stone, arrest them and knock out the gang problem right away.
That's true. Very true.
So, the interesting theory. Another one is Cyrus was killed at the behest of the mafia. And this is by Burn Notice Lover from the fan theories subreddit. At the beginning of the movie, when all the gangs show up to Cyrus's rally, conspicuously by their absence is the Italian mob, who would have still had considerable power in the 1970s. And then Cyrus gives a speech about the gangs uniting. He mentions that they could extort the government, the businesses, and crime syndicates. Obviously, not the ones at the meeting. So who? The mafia. That's who. Now, later in the movie, when confronted, Luther, the guy who killed Cyrus, says he had no motive, that he just likes doing stuff like that. But if that's true, then who was he talking on the phone booth earlier in the film? He appears to be giving status updates, recapping the events in the park. He'd be crazy to admit to the Warriors that the mob hired him to kill Cyrus. But I think exactly that's what happened. And so he put the blame on the Warriors because he assumed that being a small gang very, very far from home, they probably wouldn't make it back alive and nobody would be able to put the blame on him. I think the mob, with their waning influence, realized that they would never stand a chance against the United Street Gangs of New York, but they couldn't publicly whack a leader as respected as Cyrus. So they do it through an intermediary person like Luther. He means intermediary, but he's put intermediary, which is not spelled correctly. This one, I don't know. This one doesn't make a lot of sense for me because the mob would do it. And the reason I say that is because when he says that he blames the Warriors because of how far they were, the only reason he blames the Warriors is because Fox saw him. He looked back and saw Fox looking at him. So that's why he blamed them. Because he was smiling. He thought nobody saw him.
This one I can mentally, what's the word I'm looking at? It's not plausible by any stretch, but it sounds cool if the Italian mob was involved in this movie somehow. Like, I don't know, but it just would because I love mob movies. That's why I just think it would be cool. Not that it's plausible in any way.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think this. I think the other theory before that was more plausible than this one.
Probably. Just the mob. I love the mob. So
And here's one right out of left field by Maximus Fleximus, the same subreddit. The Warriors, 1979. Cyrus was a police officer / informer. So as many people know, at the start of the film, there's a big gang meetup held by Cyrus. There are hundreds of gangs at the meeting with their warlords. My theory is that Cyrus was either an undercover cop or an informant, and the meeting was arrest the gang members to clean up the streets. With the warlords of 100 gangs of gang members being arrested, the remaining gang members on their own home turf would be clueless on how to operate. Also, I feel Cyrus informed the police about the meeting, as how did the police know it was going to happen? I could see this, but when he's talking about taking over the city, he has the gangs do a truce. I think like the word had to get out to the police that they're all going to meet up there, which is why they came, and they knew the leaders were there. I don't know if Cyrus set them off all up because he's talking about taking over the city with them, unless he's being a really, really good actor.
that's true.
And if he became a leader of the Rifts, which is the largest gang in the city, it's kind of hard for him to pass through that hierarchy without, setting off a couple of alarms. I mean, he's no Donnie Brasco. Yeah.
Yeah, ain't no Christmas tree to fall into in this movie.
Yeah. Why he makes out with his wife. And this is a final fan theory. This is actually by multiple fans, so I didn't give credit to the specific ones. But they believe Luther is talking to himself.
Oh.
Some believe that since Luther is psychotic, he just called a random number and left it as a message. Others believe, and this is far more likely, that the boss was an organized crime member who hired Luther to kill Cyrus, as nobody else was crazy enough to accept the contract. So again, it goes back to the mafia theory. So what do you think about that one?
That's again, I've seen so many movies like him talking to himself. Could be plausible, but again, switches up the movie again a little bit.
Yeah. I don't know. I find it funnier he's just talking to himself.
Well, it is. I mean, it's like humorous. Or is he insane? I mean, it's look at it different ways.
Ooh, Jen says the mob doesn't really hide their hits. That is true.
Very true. Very true. Excellent point.
So can't be the mob. But that's our breakdown, fan theories, critical reception, and development of The Warriors, my friend. Any final thoughts?
Excellent movie all the way around. A great, like I said, slice of 1979 film. And a lot of things tonight that you brought to the forefront, that we brought to the forefront, that really was not aware of. And it's really cool to think of while I rewatch it the second time, which is why this show is great. You could really think about some of these points as you rewatch it again.
Yep. And my man, let's just start putting a bow on this one and go into coming soon, my friend.
Let's do it.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Coming soon.
Próximamente.
Coming soon.
Coming soon.
Coming soon. We got coming up this next week. Friday, correct?
Yes, Friday, sir.
This Friday coming up at the right around 8-ish mark, we were going to be digging into a 5 and 5 on the great Michael Keaton. I was reached out to Yump, and this is the man, the myth, the legend who has Beetlejuice coming out right around the corner. So I'm very excited to see the movies that you're going to send me, because man, do I got some really good deep cuts to dig into. So this is going to be a great show, kind of like the old format. We will go through 10 of his movies.
Yes, looking forward to this. Again, with new Beetlejuice movie coming out. We try to keep it more relative to what's going on, and Michael Keaton is coming out with the sequel to Beetlejuice, so we want to honor him in the coming soon segment and in our next show. Oh, Jen's giving us
it's so hilarious. I totally forgot about that movie too. It's a great one. It's a good one to pick. We'll have to wait until you pick it first.
Yeah, we gotta see what we pick for the movies. But like I said, we try to do everything that is in talked about now, and the Warriors has been talked about as a remake for a while. Recently, they have gotten a little more traction on the film. Walter Hill has come out and said that he has done his own version of the Warriors, and good luck to anybody else that wants to do their version of it. He's not technically against it. Remakes, unfortunately, are a big part of Hollywood right now. Megatropolis is one, but that film, most of it was destroyed, so I can understand why it is being remade. But you have The Crow, you have Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Blair Witch. I know those are horror movies, but have all these films coming out. I'm pretty soon, maybe in 10 years, they might have a remake of The Godfather.
Ugh.
So you never know. But we try to keep it current with what is going on in the film for our show. Tone, are you ready to get to our soundtrack pick of the week?
I'm ready. I'm excited.
Okay, my friend, let's get to it. The Sugar Baggies soundtrack pick of the week.
Tonight, when thinking of a movie that I thought would play very well with the Warriors, immediately in my head, I thought of this Emilio Estevez, Harry Dean Stanton classic from 1984, Repo Man, which is just loaded with amazing songs by Black Flag, Suicidal Tendencies, Circle Jerks, Fear. A really great soundtrack, but overall at the top of the soundtrack is an artist who this next Wednesday we're going to dig a little bit deeper on, but he's the great Iggy Pop. His track Repo Man on the song is awesome. If you've never seen Repo Man, all the punk music is mixed into the soundtrack. A really cool sci-fi, black comedy, just dark movie that I like a lot. Check out that Repo Man soundtrack. You ever see Repo Man, Yep?
Yes, I have. A great film.
But yes, please dig into that.
Great pick, man. Iggy Pop's the man.
He is the man.
He was in The Crow too.
He sure was. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
Was he in the new Crow? Since, well,
No.
I don't want to give any spoilers since you saw it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do a review for it.
Thank the Lord.
Yeah, that I was gonna write a blog or do a review. I'm not going to. I want to know what everybody else thinks before I give my reviews publicly.
It was great to wake up this morning and see them, my friend, because I had passed out before you had sent them. So seeing them this morning, well, it reminded me exactly what I thought you were going to say. So next week, maybe we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we can talk about it next week. I'll give it more detailed after the movie's been out, a little fresh. But me and the wife went to go see it. So let me know what you guys think about it. But that's our show. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for those who commented. Thank you so much for those who liked. Big head. Be sure to check out the Hookup on Music this Wednesday. Tone, what you got planned for us?
Because I was talking about him right there, digging deeper into Iggy Pop, we're also digging deeper into a couple things. There's a new artist band, Yumper. If you have not listened to them, a new album just dropped Friday. They're called Fountains DC. Really, honestly, if you like Depeche Mode and Gorillaz, excellent mixture of both. Great stuff. My daughter's going around and singing the song Starburster. Great track. New music. Also talking about some classic albums, and got some huge guests that we're looking forward to in September that we're going to talk about this next week. So keep a lookout.
Yeah, man. Really looking forward to that. I love the Hookup. I usually can't catch it live because I'm having other stuff to do, but I do listen to it on my train ride in to the city. So it's a nice little thing to hear music and tunes on the way there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Be sure to check that out. Getting Drafty in here has a show coming up on Tuesday with the birthday girl, Caitlin Reeves, and Zombie Jackie joining in for that one. I do know what the subject is this week, Tom.
Oh, what is it again? No, he just told us all the subjects. As we wrap up here, I'll figure it out. But good stuff. I mean, this last with the film and the food.
Oh yeah, very
I
good.
mean, honestly, that's one that I think you can go like 20 rounds on and honestly be pretty good at saying, well, we still can do another 20 rounds on this because it's really just it's that good, but really awesome stuff.
Yes, if you haven't seen it or heard it, Getting Drafty did a pod on movies scenes in films that have film and the best film from movies. Brian went through a eccentric way to take it, which I was laughing at. But you had Mailman Jack, at the show regular. You had Fitz Magic, who is the neighborhood reviewer of foods and good things to eat. Also, him and Jack always go out to eat. And you had Alexis, who's known to throw down on food as well. She's done a bunch of Drafty episodes as well. Wrote a couple articles for us. So be sure to check that out. It was a fun episode. I actually really enjoyed that one. Jack and Fitz get really amped about food, and Alexis was also there for the famous arancetta on the grill and arancetta tacos that we're taking with the bums. The episode that caused a lot of controversy. So be sure to check out It's Getting Drafty here. I believe the show will be at 8:00 on Tuesday with Zombie Jackie and the birthday girl Caitlin Reeves. And if you are friends with Caitlin on Twitter's, wish her a happy birthday. She's awesome. Mrs. Queen Ass. So married to the King Ass, Sam Reeves. We'll be back on Friday at 8:00, as we said before. Be sure to check out the Sadistic Penguin Studios website. We have some blogs dropping. I dropped some stuff. Tony's going to drop more stuff like he always does. I have some stuff cooking in the works, and we have a big announcement for the month of October. If you're a fan of the show, of this show, of our network, of what we do, probably have an idea of what's happening in October. But when it gets a little closer to then, we will make a formal announcement here. Thanks again for listening. Thanks again for watching. And we will see you again next week.
And before we leave real quick, it's either going to be this Tuesday on the Drafty mascots or things from your childhood you thought were true. I can't remember.
Things from your childhood you thought were true.
Yeah,
yes, that's okay. I'm definitely watching that one.
It's going to be a good one. Please tune in. Tune into all the stuff. Please go check out Yumper's article on Miller's Crossing. What was really awesome was as I was posting my hookup on music, and then I saw the pictures, and I was like, oh, he's working on Miller's Crossing. This is going to be amazing. Check it out. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you Friday.
Take it easy, guys.
Thanks for listening to the At The Show podcast, a Sadistic Penguin Studios production.
Game over, man. It's game over. What the fuck are we gonna do now? What are we gonna do?
Maybe we could build a fire, sing a couple of songs, huh? Why don't we try that?